Okay. Happy July. So we got a fun topic today, right? Thought I'd throw it out there, see how excited people are. But we're gonna get into the topic in a bit, and I'm gonna really expand the topic, and of course, bring in a lot of spirituality to it, which is important, I think, with this topic. But before that, let's just get a little centered, grounded, just some meditating together. Quiet our minds, relax our bodies, let go of everything, our lives for now. Take a pause, put a pause on all the stresses, issues we have going on, and just let ourselves become present to just being here today and just being very open, receiving, accepting, allowing whatever needs to come and go. And I'll wait till Mike comes on in, and then what we'll do is we'll do like a short 10-minute meditation. However you want to meditate, but just the idea is just let yourself get centered, grounded as much as possible. Focus on your breath, focus on something, always very helpful. Or just let yourself be present to where you are right here, right now, okay? And so you'll hear the little ding for the 10-minute marker. You can go and open your eyes then. So let's for a few minutes stay where you are, with your eyes closed if you will. And what I'd like to do is invoke with gratitude and honor all the teachers of the past, from all the cultures of the world, from the beginning of time, in every civilization, the great wisdom keepers, the great guides, the teachers that have helped us and guided us. Give them a moment of gratitude, if you will. And may we honor our personal guides, our personal teachers in our lives, who have helped us, supported us. And as you feel the gratitude, as you really try to feel it in your heart, that wonderful feeling of being thankful and joyful for being helped and guided and assisted, even when you may not know it. As you tune into that, if you can, allow yourself to feel the very top of your head, where the crown chakra is. And just put your attention there at the very top of your head and tune in to any feeling you may notice there, any sensation, any tingling, any vibration, any warmth, coolness, however it may express to you. And if you feel nothing, that's fine as well. Just keep your attention there. This is the point where we receive wisdom and knowledge to help us, guide us, lead us. The intuition, the support. Tune in to the very top of your head and just notice what you feel. And just receive, allow, accept. And then with a few deep breaths, when you're ready, go and open your eyes. All right, great. How are you doing? Good. So, for those interested, the very top of the head, if you're interested in feeling energy, feeling an aspect of your energy body, understanding what are called the chakras, the energy centers, are part of it, and tuning into where they're classically said to be is part of the process. And so at the very top of the head is where what's called the crown chakra is. And it's one of the easiest to feel with a little bit of practice. And whether you felt something today or not, you know, it's not the most important thing. It's cool when you feel it. It's fun. But it is a thing you can start to tune into and actually feel. And as you notice it, feel it, tune into it, with your attention, you're actually promoting more of a flow through that space, which is part of the practice for people who practice these things. So, but that's a whole big rabbit hole in topic, but I thought I'd just bring that in for fun to begin with, you know, and it's a thing that I've done myself a lot when I first started my journey, and some of the things I got involved with, that was part of the practice, and it can be very energizing. it can really uplift your energy. It helps, it brings energy into the brain, obviously, because the crown chakra is connected to the brain itself, and the glands in the brain, specifically the pineal and the pituitary, depending on where you read. But these are ways to actually bring in energy into the head, and you can start to feel it. And some of you kind of know what I'm talking about, but it's a thing. And I remember it was really dramatic for me. And as I got into it, I would feel my head buzzing like for days. In any case, that was a fun little tidbit.
Cool.
So,
Thanks.
anything anyone wants to share about anything else? Any musings, questions about anything? This is the space to share.
Well, I have a question about that meditation, especially on chakra centers, but should we just pay attention to the sensations that are there, or should we call forth any, they talk about white light, they talk about, is there a better or worse as far as like developing that ability to stay present with
Great
it?
question. So the thing is, yeah, you can read all kinds of books that tell you different ways and methods to visualize, and that's the whole system of the Tantra of the East, the energy Kundalini practices of the East, most of the practices of Western magic, the occult practices, the modern day New Age energy practices have all these elements in it. Focusing on certain parts of your body, using visualization or affirmations or other ritualistic methods, those are meant to focus your attention. The nutshell is all of those methodologies are meant to help you focus, right? So nothing is magical by itself. If you like a certain methodology, you can use it to help you focus. So when I learned it, for example, I would focus on my crown chakra and I would visualize it as a spinning disc, or like a little mini tornado, right? I would visualize that literally. And then I would visualize it getting faster and faster and faster, spinning faster and faster. The point is to help your mind connect to the reality of the phenomena. So what will end up happening is the chakras are meant to bring in energy. That's their function in the esoteric realm. They draw in, they're essentially like acupuncture points, but they're just major acupuncture points. In Chinese medicine, for example, the traditional Hindu Buddhist chakras are acupuncture points. Literally. They're used in acupuncture, right? But they use it in certain ways, in different ways. But so the point is, these are major points along the spine that have different effects. And for example, specific ones, like the traditional 7 chakras of a lot of Eastern practices, are a really big deal because they affect you in big ways. So any way you can connect to them with your attention is the key, right? So whether it's a certain visualization, a certain technique to bring in certain energies, none of it is specifically the key by itself, right? Find something that you like, use it. If you don't want to use anything, don't, right? You can simply focus on it. Because the key is where your attention is, energy flows. That's it. Literally, that's it. Where your attention is, energy flows. Energy means prana, chi, ki, whatever you want to call it. The vital force of the universe. Okay, flowing around us, the force of Star Wars. Okay, where your attention is, that's where it's going to go. Problem is, we are pretty incapable usually of keeping our energy on one place for a while. That's concentration, right? That's a problem for so many. For us too, when you're not grounded, when you're stressed, things are going on, full of distractions, concentration really sucks. So therefore our energy gets scattered, right? So the whole point, one point of meditation, one point of concentration is to harness our natural ability to focus, which is a power of the mind. And so when we do that, it naturally activates the flow of our inherent prana and chi. That's really it, right? So when we're focusing on the crown chakra and we keep our attention there, we are giving the direction to our subconscious, to our energy body. Hey, bring more energy there. Activate it. Okay, the body goes. And so it starts to open up the crown chakra even more. And then you can feel it. Eventually. You can tune into it and that's the whole point. And as you feel it, as you feel the sensation, you can just simply tune into the sensation. That's a more of a mindfulness-based practice in this way. You just tune into the sensation of it. That's all you gotta do. Because the sensation of it becomes a way to focus as well, right? If you just do that, same thing. But if you can sustain it with concentration, that's the game changer. You know, doing this for a second is very different than doing it for 10 minutes. It's very different than doing it for 30 minutes. It's very different than doing it for an hour. With unwavering concentration on one specific thing. Think about how productive you are for all the people who, you know, are doing projects, creative projects, blah, blah, blah. When you concentrate for an hour doing your project, how amazing is that? We're doing it all the time. Outwardly, usually. You know, we're channeling our prana outwardly to an expression to make amazing things, because we can. When you do it inwardly, which is the whole world of spiritual cultivation, when you do it inwardly, well, amazing, great things happen too inside. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just pick something.
Yeah.
Something you've read, something you're already accustomed to, familiar with, or just nothing. Just tune into the feeling. It all works the same way. Generally speaking. And there can be nuances and differences, and you know, that's a different rabbit hole. Any other questions? Comments? Thoughts? Experiences? Any wins, breakthroughs with anything? Questions from former satsangs? As I hope you go back and listen to them on the YouTube channel.
My favorite is the yugas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a fun one. The cycles of time. Yeah, that's a complicated one. That's a
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's very-
most of it.
meaty and heady.
Yeah, okay, so I have a question about that. So it's like you have these yugas, right? But then there's also the theory that we're just in this one moment, which is just kind of like, it's just this present moment, and we're seeing it as a passage of time. Where it's like, so how do you think of the yugas as well as thinking that there's just the present moment? There seems to be a rub there.
Well, I would say think about your life.
Okay,
Think about the span of your life and the ages of your life,
all right,
right? Childhood, teenage years,
yeah,
you know, youth, and then middle age, old age. And each one has characteristics, certain qualities, certain things you're good at, not good at, right?
right,
So, but within your own life, think about the infinite moments. Like this moment is happening now in your
Right.
present age,
yeah,
your epoch, time period of whatever that is for you, right? Which is different than what it was before. The previous
Right.
age of your life segment. There's another segment coming up,
right,
right? And so in a general sense, it's kind of one way to think of it,
Right.
is the thing. You know, we have moments within greater periods, and the yugas are an idea of letting people know that there's a purpose and a rhyme or reason
Yeah, okay.
behind existence.
Okay, it kind of
See.
gets you there.
There is a energy of evolution for the planet, for the civilization, for humanity, for us, right? That's kind of the idea.
Right.
And this cyclical force of evolution that runs at a global scale, at a minor scale in our lives, right? In a planetary scale, at a galactic scale, this evolutionary force, this, in other words, this divine intelligence manifesting to help us along. And in each of those different ages, from golden to the third age, second age, to the dark age, each age is meant to promote different qualities and energies to help you along,
Okay, yeah.
right? Kind of like when we're young, it's time to play.
Yeah.
And then when we're students, it's time to learn. We're doing other things too, right? And then it's usually how things are. It's time to work after that, right? Or do something. You know, that's kind of the same thing. You know, the golden age, it's time to be in connection with the divine. It's
Right.
easier.
Right.
Our bodies and minds are more attuned to it. The world is different. Like,
Right.
remember, like, you know, I said, like, in some of the sacred writings they talk about in the golden ages, nature was different. Literally. And I remember reading, like, how in the previous golden ages, for example, nature could respond and communicate to you in real time. So, like, you have stories of, and we kind of see it now, even like in some of the Disney fantasy stories. You know, like, if you've ever seen Moana, right? Moana, the wave
yeah.
comes and talks
Yeah.
to Moana. Well, you have depictions of that in the older golden ages from these stories, right? A tree would bend down and help you. A wave would come up to interact with you, right? We don't think of that anymore. We think of, like, you know, plants are just like inert now.
Yeah.
They don't move.
Animistic cultures still experience that though.
Right. But they do in a in kind of a higher dimension usually. Right? If they can tune into it, but what I'm saying is, in the past, in the normal 3D, right, the veil was not there. So it was literally experienced here and now. You see what I mean? And so beyond just a belief, and beyond just a way of living life according to a certain belief of connecting to all things, which we can do now, right? But I'm saying in the golden ages, nature would literally move for you and interact for you, and they would, like, describe it.
I feel like that Irish prayer, like, may the road rise to meet you.
Yeah.
I feel like it's...
What if that really happened?
That's connected to
Ground
that.
shifted.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, they kind of talk about some of these things. Animals talked over and over again, right? In the old stories, animals are talking, and we just kind of go, oh, it's just, you know, fiction. You know, the license of authors to creatively make up things as we do now. But what if it was kind of different? The Buddha would talk about the enlightenment of animals being a thing, and they'd be on their own different path of enlightenment. He would talk about interacting with enlightened animals. And he especially talked about foxes, enlightened foxes. He would interact with, and he would speak to them, and they would, like, share their side of things with him.
Like telepathically.
Maybe, I mean, the point is that, I mean, these stories would talk about his interactions, and they would say, like, he would tell his people, like, look, it's way different for them than us. Enlightenment for humans is very different than enlightenment for a different animal. What if that was a commonplace back back before recorded history. In any case, I digress. But but does that kind of help with the yugas?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's an evolutionary force is the idea. It has helped to
Right.
assist us and promote certain things, right? The Dark Age is meant to promote really clearing our trash and karma. That's why the darkness comes up so easily now in the world and in us. It's supposed to be that way in the Kali Yuga, the Dark Age. Until it changes again, and it will. That's the good thing, right?
In what, 10,000 years?
Well, yeah. Or not, who knows,
Yeah.
right? That's another rabbit hole. I think we talked about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, let's get into aliens. Who's seen Disclosure Day?
Who's seen what?
The movie Disclosure Day by
Oh.
Steven Spielberg that came out. Nobody. Yeah, I haven't
No.
either.
It's the new one, right?
Yeah, the new one.
I want to badly, but I haven't seen it yet.
I
I've
didn't
just
even know
read
it
things
existed.
about it. Yeah.
Disclosure Day?
Disclosure Day.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be one of his best movies, and it's
Oh,
supposed
wow.
to
Cool.
show
Okay.
a lot of stuff, allegedly.
Okay.
But when I say aliens, what do we think of? What do you guys think of?
I think of the Greys.
Grays. What else?
Well, there's a traditional model, that is always depicted with the eyes shaped the way that they are, and
Yeah.
whatever,
Non-human looking something,
Yeah,
right?
with arms and legs and
Yeah. UFOs,
yeah.
flying saucers. What else?
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy, yeah. Good ones, bad ones in those stories, right?
All right.
Non-human looking,
Abduction.
living everywhere. Abductions, right, with grays, abductions, right? So we have this specific, don't forget reptilians, right? So we have this specific way that the idea of aliens has been promoted of generally something that's non-human, that interacts and isn't from Earth, right? The general idea,
Right.
not from here, hence
Yeah.
the word alien. Extraterrestrial. Okay, well, I want to take that and literally blow it apart, okay? And expand it in every direction, this idea of alien. To, in my mind, what it really represents to us, grounded in the way it was spoken of in the ancient world. And again, I love going back to what our original teachers and bearers of wisdom were talking about in most every culture. What were they saying? They had a lot to say about aliens, by the way. A lot to say about ETs. And the thing is, before I get kind of into the more esoteric spiritual component of it, just to kind of emphasize the fact that he had a lot to say, I'm going to read a few excerpts of from some of the more Vedic Indian traditions of how they saw the universe, to give you an idea, to blow this idea apart that we think of in the old world. We thought the earth was flat, and that we were the center of the universe. The typical old Christian model, right? And for some, still the current model. But, which is based on half-truths, by the way. You know, the flat earthers, the, what's it called? What was it called, Mike? The people who have this altered view of recent history we were talking about?
Forget.
With a T. What was it?
Oh, the
The Tartarians.
yeah.
Anyone heard of that?
Oh.
I've heard of
Tartarus?
Tartaria.
Tartaria,
Like
Tartarus,
the
yeah.
1800s and
Yes.
how they destroyed.
Yes, our recent, like, few hundred years
fountains and
didn't exist. And it was all kind of made up, what we have in history.
mud flood.
That all, like, the European massive architecture was from a previous civilization that has been erased. But a recent civilization from, like, the 1800s, 1600s, 1500s, that time period, that what we have in our history is a lie. That type of, there's a whole conspiracy line with that. Okay? But, so the thing is, they're pulling certain truths, but making up their own story about these things, you know. But the point is, you know, all over the ancient world, they talked about aliens and ETs, and a very expanded view of the universe, beyond just a flat Earth, or there's no one out there, nothing out there. You know, that was not what the ancients were speaking of at all. And so, you know, recently we've come across some of these, you know, from like the Dogon tribe in Africa. Do we know about that? Dogon tribe is a tribe in Africa, and when they were discovered, basically, and their mythology was understood, they would speak of that they came from the stars Sirius, which are 3 stars, and they described the 3 stars, which we didn't know there were 3 stars until recently, with our current astronomy. But they knew it in their mythology from whoever told them.
Interesting.
Right? But this is across the board in the world. You find this. So, let me read to you guys some stuff, which is so fun. So these excerpts are from certain Hindu texts which describe the understanding of the universe. And so, as I've shared with you, you know, especially in the Hindu Vedic context, they talked about multiverse. Right, we're going from flat Earth, old Christian model, to multiverse here, right, which was the original ancient Indian view. So, you know, some of these excerpts, for example, this is from the Bhagavata Purana. Every universe is covered by 7 layers: earth, water, fire, air, sky, the total energy, and false ego. And if you don't understand all of this, it doesn't matter, you know, because there's a lot of these specific things that are mentioned. Each 10 times greater than the previous one. There are innumerable universes besides this one. And although they are unlimitedly large, they move about like atoms in you. Therefore, you are called unlimited. Another one, same text, Bhagavata Purana. Because you are unlimited, neither the lords of heaven nor even you yourself can ever reach the end of your glories. The countless universes, each enveloped in its shell, are compelled by the wheel of time to wander within you like particles of dust blowing about in the sky. Another excerpt. The layers or elements covering the universe are each 10 times thicker than the one before. And all universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. They're mentioning atoms from thousands of years ago. Now, the funnest one from a certain text, it says, you know one universe. Living entities are born in many universes, like mosquitoes in fig trees. So, these are just some excerpts about this view that was mind-blowing in the ancient world of multiverses. in existence. Which means they were inhabited by beings. And remember, that's literally what the worldview was. That humans are one amongst many, countless types of beings. And in a certain part of the Vedas, they even say, as an example, not to be taken literally, there are 8,400,000 different types of life forms in our universe alone. Okay? As an example of how they were thinking. Now, in the modern day term, in the ET world, if you ever get into it, they talk about different types of extraterrestrials. Okay? And they have different terms for that now, which is very helpful. There's the typical, like we kind of talked about, the physical, non-Earth alien, the extraterrestrial. There's intraterrestrial, which means beings from Earth that are hidden away. Inner Earth, underneath the ocean maybe, right? So they're indigenous, but non-human. Or maybe human, but they're different, but of the Earth. Intraterrestrial. Physical. Interesting, right?
Like Bigfoot.
Bigfoot, yes. I love Bigfoot. And Yeti. And the Russians call Alma. There's a famous story about I'm going to sidetrack. Thank you, Olive. Look up Russian Alma. A-L-M-A. That's what they call Bigfoot. Okay? There's a mind-blowing account from I think the 1800s of a guy that allegedly trapped and brought home a female Alma, Bigfoot.
Whoa.
And kept, some of this is dark, kept her in his house as a slave, trapped for a while. And the story is the Alma started to acclimate and interact with him. And they eventually started living together openly. They had kids. And there are stories of the descendants. And this is such a famous story. People have tried to track down the actual kids. And there are some allegedly photographs of the son, of one of the sons, and how he looked. And there were stories in the villages of them and their descendants. Fascinating.
Alma.
Alma. Yeah. In any case, yeah, Bigfoot. Just stay with Bigfoot for a second. There's a lot of ET connection to Bigfoot, just so people know which documentaries are getting into, where Bigfoot, there are accounts of Bigfoot where Bigfoot is able to do a lot of paranormal stuff like shapeshift, appear, disappear at will, lights, balls of light in association with Bigfoot, stuff like that, which it's an amazing rabbit hole. But so, interterrestrial is another term, which is dimensional ETs of Earth. Okay, now we just expanded, right? The whole idea. Interdimensional beings right here, right now. So they belong here, they're of Earth, but we can't see them. Oh, that can include a lot of things, right? We'll get into that, right? And then there's expanding the interdimensional idea, the ultra-dimensional, which means just dimensional universal beings. They don't have to be of the Earth. Right? So these are some modern-day ET lore terms. Very interesting to bring into the mix. But now the ancients talked about each of these categories, literally, and went into detail about each of these categories. And have fun accounts of encounters from beings in each of these categories. to the extent where they openly discussed that many of their gods and goddesses were these beings from these categories. And so to them, many of the gods and goddesses of the ancient world were aliens. Coming full circle to how we think of aliens, right? And we have a lot of that these days too. The whole Anunnaki storyline. Who doesn't know about that term? Anunnaki. Wonderful. So that's the Sumerians called their gods, their main pantheon of gods, the Anunnaki, which translates, I think, into the alien ones, literally. Okay, so they call them that, and those were their set of deities of Anu, Enki, Enlil, Inanna, Marduk, the whole Sumerian, Babylonian pantheon, which heavily influenced Western civilization, by the way. That's a whole different rabbit hole. And so the whole Middle Eastern pantheons of the Canaanites, the original, Old Testament gods of India. I'm going to digress for a second, but in the Old Testament, when they talk about, when some of the research into the original origins of the Old Testament are kind of brought up by these researchers, when you get into the gods of the Canaanites, right? Baal, El, Elyon, these terms specifically that are mentioned in the Old Testament of a multiplicity of beings that they're dealing with, where Yahweh is saying, there are many gods around me, guys, but only worship me, please. Right? He's literally saying that. So, inferring there's a whole host of equivalent beings like Yahweh that are in his family, right? And these researchers are pointing to the fact that Yahweh himself was not the head. That in the Old Testament, talk about a supreme leader of the council, El Elyon, for those of you familiar with it, being the presiding chief of whatever they were, okay? And so, but this gets into then the gods of the Canaanites and the whole myriads of gods and deities that are connected to the Sumerian deities in overlapping ways, because remember, all of that area before was Sumerian, Babylonian, up into the Turkey region, massive overlap of these old pantheons of gods and goddesses who, in their stories, they're telling you, we're not from here. They're telling you that. Literally. Not just we're not from here, but this is where we live. Of course, the Greeks are telling you we're from Mount Olympus. Where was that? Right? And other parts of the world are telling you we're not from here. The ancient Tuatha De Danann from the British Isles, who doesn't know Tuatha De Danann? If you have any Irish, Scottish, British heritage, I highly recommend go into that. The Tuatha De Danann were the legend. Most of a lot of what Tolkien researched was North and Tuatha De Danann folklore to create the stories, right? The Tuatha De Danann had a story about the ring. They had a story about Excalibur. Like, much of the stories we have from the British Isles comes from their folklore, and their stories are legendary in terms of they came from the sky in ships and landed in the British Isles and essentially colonized there. Highly magical, elvish-like beings, they're described. And Tolkien actually got a lot of his elvish lore from them, which is fascinating, as well as the Norse. There's a lot of overlap there too, right? And so, but the Tuatha De Danann, look that up. Fascinating. I mean, I love the Tuatha De Danann. But then you have the Norse, right? They're talking about the 9 realms. If you ever get into Norse, and Marvel, thankfully, made Thor popular in Asgard. which is fun. But the Norse are talking about these beings that are interacting. The elves, the giants. Of course, the Greeks have the Titans and, the whole Greek pantheon, which is mind-blowing if you, right? All of us are exposed to it, right, growing up in America. But, when you dive into it, it's just mind-blowing the intricacy of the pantheon of the Greeks that they had. Which, who knows where that comes from? It was a time before. Modern history just kind of whitewashes it, this ancient heroic age from the legends. And so then in India, you have the same stuff going on. And now what I'm going to share with you is this story in India from one of their epochs, the Mahabharata, which I've talked about before. Anyone not know the Mahabharata? Which is one of the, just a brief review, it's one of the premier epoch stories in ancient India. It's the longest prose work in history. I think it's at least 10 times longer than Homer's Iliad. So it's, Mahabharata means the great land. Bharata was the ancient name of India. So great means, Maha means great, so the great land, Mahabharata. It's the story of these two feuding family sides. And the story of Krishna is in there, right? And the great famous Bhagavad Gita in Hinduism, where Krishna plays the role, is taken from that, Mahabharata, to give you context, right? So, in ancient India, the Mahabharata was considered history, is the thing. The ancients had a different view of the word history than we do, which is what's fascinating, right? To them, their myths were history, which means that's how it happened. And so, for example, in the Indian languages, the history means itihasa, is the Sanskrit word for history, which means this is how it happened. It's what it translates into. And so the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, they fall into itihasa. This is how it happened. And so the Mahabharata has, it's a massive compilation of the social, religious, cultural context of India at that time, with historical figures allegedly, and timelines, and stories of older stories within the story. So I'm going to read you an excerpt about a conversation happening in the story where someone's asking, where did all these gods come from that we talk about, interact with? Because in the Mahabharata, they're still interacting with some of these gods, which is interesting. In the story, they're still around, and they're interacting with them. And so a person is asking a sage, where'd they come from? And then the sage tells them how it came about. I'm going to read this to you guys. So as I read this, for those of you who, have kind of been into some modern New Age alien lore, or have a general idea of, some of the alien stuff, notice the parallels of what was written thousands of years ago versus what's been talked about now. So let me pull this up. Hold on a second. This excerpt is in Russian. I have to translate it into English. Usually it does it automatically. Let me see it. There we go. Okay, so to give context now, in the ancient Indian lore, the gods were described in detail in terms of their family lineages, where they came from, and all these things. And so there were two sets of conflicting beings, as we see in most ancient myths, right? And as we describe them now, the good guys and the bad guys, okay? And most cultures talk about the good gods and the bad gods. The good gods being the ones who were like righteous, good, protecting mankind. And the bad ones who were doing their own thing and had their own rules and codes, and oftentimes, you know, didn't have the empathy and took advantage of humanity, and, you know, kind of like humanity now, right? But if you can imagine pulling apart these two groups now, and so in India, the Devas and the Asuras became the proper distinction. Devas being the good guys, Asuras being the bad guys. Okay? Originally, it was not so clear. In the earlier Rig Veda, for example, in the earlier Vedas, there's a lot of overlap. It was not. They were one family, which was interesting. Over time, you see two camps forming of the good Devas and the bad Asuras. But in the original sources, the Devas and Asuras were just one family. Okay? And what's fascinating, in Persia, modern day Iran, Iraq, Persia, the ancestors of the Sumerians and the Babylonians and the Assyrians, okay? In their evolving religion, they made the Asuras the good guys and the Devas the bad guys in the Zoroastrian religion. Okay, Zoroastrianism is one of the most ancient religions that is kind of dead now. You still have pockets of it. Who knows about Zoroastrianism? So the symbol, when you see, for example, if you see symbols of Persia, of this man with two wings, has anyone ever seen that? There's this man sitting, he's like in the middle, and the two massive wings are coming out. You know?
Like a face.
Like a face, kind of.
Yeah.
That's the symbol of Zoroastrianism. But Zoroastrianism is thousands of years predating Christ. And many actual Middle Eastern researchers can find a lot of Judeo-Christian themes coming from Zoroastrianism, is the thing. Because Zoroaster really talked about God and a dark force. God and Satan, for example. This dark antithesis to God, and this constant battle happening. And Zoroastrianism really made that popular. And a lot of researchers see how a lot of that was pulled over into the Old Testament. In any case, that's a big rabbit hole too. So the point is, they reversed it in their religion. The Devas were the bad guys, and the Asuras were the good guys. Which is fascinating. In any case, okay, so just kind of forget that for now. But the idea is, so originally it was one family, and the Asuras themselves had subfamilies that this is going to talk about, okay? So I'm going to read you an excerpt now. The Datyas, to keep it simple, I'm going to replace some of these terms to keep it simple, and I'll say Asuras for the bad guys, okay? So, having lost their high position and power, the early Asuras began to take birth on this planet. So just that first sentence, think about that. They're literally telling you these ETs, for some reason, started incarnating on this planet, okay? Carefully calculating that they would easily become gods of earth, subjugating it to their demonic power. Thus it happened that among various beings and communities, the Asuras began to appear. With amazing precision, carrying out their carefully calculated invasion of Earth, the Asuras hid in different forms. Some of these beings even took birth as bulls, cows, donkeys, camels, buffaloes, elephants, deer, and other four-legged creatures. They were born in such numbers that the earth itself could hardly bear such a heavy burden. Having lost their former position on the high planets, these beings appeared in this world as great-powered kings in other guises. They were brave and arrogant and literally filled the ocean-girth earth, ready to crush anyone who dared oppose them. And then, walking across the earth in hundreds and thousands, they began to kill all earthly creatures, sowing horror around themselves. This is part of it. So, what are they talking about? When are they talking about? Right? But the happiness of people was not destined to last. Great events originated beyond the earth, brought an unexpected and terrible end to these happy times. I think they're shifting kind of timelines here. Having abandoned their military positions on the higher planets, deprived of power, they're still talking about the bad guys, deprived of power and positions, the Asuras in despair conceived a plot to seize control of the universe. They decided that they would first take, this is I think a different section, saying the same thing. They decided they would take first a birth in the small planet Earth, taking the bodies of people and other living beings, and thus effortlessly subjugated our tiny planet to their power. Having become masters of the earth, they intended to challenge the divine Devas again and enslave the universe. So, they lost to the Devas before this, is the thing. And because of that, they came to take refuge on earth. The evil Devas, the evil Asuras were ready to do anything to gather their strength and take revenge on their rivals. Fearing exposure by the powerful, so some backstory, the good Devas in this storyline had come originally to Earth before the Asuras. They were the first to come, the first gods, the good gods to come to Earth, and they then had their influence on early humanity, is in the story. Later, then, these Asuras come from other warfare, galactic warfare, if you will. Okay? So, fearing exposure by the powerful Devas, they entered the wombs of earthly queens, and taking the form of human beings, were born among members of royal families.
Illuminati.
With age, the Asuras began to manifest themselves as powerful and proud monarchs. And so, again, there's reference that, again, the earth goddess herself was unable to bear the burden of their presence. Despite this, they continued to infest the earth, and there were more and more of them. They surrounded the innocent inhabitants of earth and who were unaware of their true nature. They multiplied by the hundreds and thousands. They began to kill living beings and destroy their homes. Under the rule of these mighty Asuras, the earth was in such a hopeless situation that even the Devas, who were specially summoned to protect it, were caught unaware and could not resist the onslaught.
Wow.
Okay, but there's hope. Okay, just let me read this. Again, this is from another section. These beings landed in large numbers, and they encountered a lot of resistance from native beings of Earth, the snake people and other beings. And the other original Devas who were originally established on this planet. There's then a famous story. The ruler of the Danavas, a certain class of asuras, incarnated on earth as King Jarasandha, who, in the Indian epoch stories, this king, in the story, there's this constant warfare against the reptilian Nagas, the indigenous snake reptilian people of earth is how they describe it. So this king in the story, they describe it as the greatest genocide in world history occurred, where he gathered up all the snake people and tried to kill them and burn them. And he was stopped because one half snake, half human, that's a whole different story, sage, convinced him to stop. And so he did. That's a whole different side story. Fascinating. So, and so because of this, what ends up happening is the Mother Earth in the story beseeches the creator of the universe, of this universe. And the creator's like, okay, I'm going to command the Devas to come down to help you guys out. So then what happens is in this story, the Devas also start incarnating now as humans. And in some of the Indian stories, they directly come down as avatars. So like Indra, Vishnu, these beings now incarnate as human historical figures for these epoch stories. So like in the Mahabharata, for example, most of the major characters are incarnations of these higher beings. You follow?
Yeah.
Okay. These are all ET stories. All of these are ET stories, right? I'm going to now shift gears and read you an excerpt. Now, to me, this is, when we think of an ET, we should think of this story because it is the most mind-blowing excerpt of the potential of what we're talking about. Because what we're talking about is really the evolution of a sentient being. Because ETs and humans are kind of in the same family, right? We were talking about it. We're all sentient beings on this journey in this universe. Okay? So, I'm going to now read you an excerpt about the origin story of the goddess Tara. Tara is a famous goddess in Buddhism and Hinduism. Okay, Tibetan Buddhism really focuses on Tara for a lot of their rituals, the goddess Tara. In Hinduism in certain aspects too. So, T-A-R-A. Who's heard of Tara? Yeah. So, there's a famous story of her origins, a mythological story. I'm going to read that to you guys. And when I read this, I started weeping. Literally. Let me read it to you. Okay. So, it's kind of funny too. By the way, this is on Wikipedia. So, the tale begins with a young princess who lives in a different world system millions of years in the past. Her name is Yeshedawa, or Yanachandra. It depends on, I guess, where you're reading from. Which means moon of primordial awareness. Lovely, right? For quite a number of eons, she makes offerings to the Buddha of that world system, whose name is Tonyo Drupa. She receives special instruction from him concerning bodhicitta, which is the infinitely compassionate mental state of bodhisattva, how to cultivate compassion. Okay? After doing this, some monks approach her and suggest that because of her level of attainment, she should next pray to be reborn as a male to progress further. Okay? At this point, she lets the monks know, in no uncertain terms, that it is only weak-minded worldlings who see gender as a barrier to attaining enlightenment. The original feminist. She sadly notes there have been few who wish to work for the welfare of sentient beings in a female form, though. Therefore, she resolves to always be reborn as a female bodhisattva until samsara is no more. She then stays in a palace in a state of meditation for some 10 million years. And the power of this practice releases tens of millions of beings from suffering. As a result of this, Donya Drupa tells her she will henceforth manifest Supreme Bodhi as the goddess Terra in many world systems to come. That's an ET story. Technically. Now imagine if we thought of ETs like this.
Yeah.
Right? Aliens. Who meditate for millions of years. Who are these beings beyond conception to our minds. These ultra-terrestrial aliens, right? Man, this is what the old world was talking about all the time. That's how they saw these otherworldly visitors who didn't have to come in spaceships like maybe some of the physical ones do.
Because they have their own spaceship, like
They are their
the
spaceship.
Merkaba, right?
Well, the Merkaba, right, in Judaism, is that creating a vehicle of light to travel is what the Merkaba is. So there is that. You know, we need containers of consciousness. We have bodies, and we have cars to travel, right? And so, depending on our level of consciousness, we need vehicles to move around in, right? Basically,
Yeah.
think of it that way. We need vehicles. And so modern humans are creating pretty fast vehicles, planes, flying vehicles. They're going to get faster. And so same thing, maybe a lot of physical ETs have these physical vehicles, these energetic vehicles. The Merkaba, certain esoteric traditions talk about energetic vehicles that aren't physical, that are created with consciousness, attention, whatever means, right? Then you have beings who don't need physical vehicles or energetic vehicles that can just simply maybe portal through, I don't know, teleport. Or then beings who can expand their consciousness, who don't even need to teleport. They're just wherever they want to be,
Yeah.
whenever they want to be. Like a being like Tara, who can do that. So we go from a gray to the goddess Tara, for example,
Yeah.
right? That's what I want to kind of leave you with, guys. Right? This is the highest pinnacle of ET. In the, especially the Indian tradition, they talk about Vishnu is an ET. Shiva is a being beyond the earth. All the great forms of the goddess in all the cultures, Tara included. These are beings. Beings, that means people.
Yeah. So speaking of Shiva, like they talk about Mount Kailash. They say some people
His
think it's a
abode.
spaceship, or
Right.
They say it's not a mountain. It's so if it's a spaceship, then
And there's beings meditating in Mount Kailash.
there are beings. Well, I know Shiva lives there, right? They say that's
the
that's
story.
the abode of
That's his
Shiva.
abode. He lives there.
So when you
Why
say
are they
beings,
speaking of a person, a being,
kind of beings?
a god living someplace?
Beings that can meditate for thousands and they can just
So
sit
non-human,
for millions
yeah.
of years.
I would love to write a fantasy story where Shiva awakens from within Mount Kailash.
Like there's stories that you can't even get close to it because
Oh,
the
yeah.
energy repels people.
Oh, yeah.
And they have to turn back.
No one can climb it, right? It's a famous. You look up Mount Kailash.
Oh
and
yeah, it's
hiking it
crazy.
on YouTube and online. Nobody can do it.
There's like a group of people that tried, and
People
then
lose
they
consciousness.
aged like super fast. They became
Yeah,
like
time
old
distortions,
Men. Yeah,
right?
they all of a sudden like 5 years they were like old men because they say it was because they attempted to climb Kailash.
Right. Right. Fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.
And the only one is a famous Tibetan, Siddha Milarepa,
Yeah.
is supposedly the only one to ever climb Mount Kailash.
But you said he didn't climb it. He took
He
a
flew, yeah.
he flew up. Yeah. So that doesn't count.
It's easier, right? It's not easier.
Why not?
Can you speak to any of the maybe similarities like between the Hindu ways of looking at it and like what I've learned from anthroposophy, which is like, for example, the Greys are humans on a different timeline who chose the AI route. And that's why they have concave heart spaces, and that's why their mental areas, like the brains are so large because they're overly mental and underly heart.
You want to talk about the Greys?
I don't like, or like the Pleiadians, for example, who are
Yeah, I mean, the whole class of ET lore right now, is everywhere online, right? I mean, so the Pleiadians, the Syrians, the Nordics, the Reptilians, the Greys, it's fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff, right? I was so into that way back in the day.
You're over it now.
No, I'm not. I'm not over it. It's a thing now. I've understood kind of the bigger picture with all of that. Is the
How
thing.
do those fit into the bigger picture?
Well, those are physical beings, right? Like I kind of shared with you the most expansive view of ET, right? That's what we've kind of done. So, but now there's also, we have a whole host of physical ET stories, right? And things we call ETs that may not be ETs, but actually intraterrestrials, beings of the earth, that have been here before us, maybe still here, right now, physical beings, right, of inner earth. Or there's a whole idea of the Greys that actually, aren't the traditional story of the Greys, but stories of that they're actually us, right? The original stories of the Greys from like the New Age lore from like the 70s and 80s, where they were from a different star system, Zeta Reticuli, and they were like us, but they lost their emotional body because of catastrophe and nuclear war. They went underground, and their physical body changed by living underground for thousands of years. They lost their hair and pigment, and eyes got bigger, and brain increased, and they couldn't have kids. They started becoming sterile, so their engineers started hybridizing them so that they could survive, so their bodies changed even more. So that's like the original story of the Greys that you read about.
And that's why they were the ones who were abducting people because they wanted.
And then, so when they came, they made contracts with the governments and started abducting people, do these contracts in exchange for technology. We'd give technology to, they'd give technology to human governments if we give them permission to abduct, is the story, right? And so there's a whole rabbit hole with Eisenhower, how we met with, there's a UFO landed in front of the White House in the 50s. There's a whole rabbit hole. And Eisenhower met with them, signed a pact, and from henceforth the abductions began. Right. That's a whole fun storyline. But there's a lot of now idea that the Greys are not that, but actually now humans from a future timeline who lost their way due to similar circumstances and now have come back to interact with us. There's that too. There's also potentially the Greys have always been here in some fashion or another, right? The Hopi talked about the ant people, helping them after they came out of the caves
Yeah, I've
after
heard
the
about
last
that.
catastrophe, right?
And then like the hole closed up or
Right.
something, they couldn't get back in.
The ant people helped the Hopi survive. Rays look kind of like ants. I don't know. Who knows? But I think the Gray story has been very misused and abused also by now, to create a lot of fear and create this template for an alien that we all associate with now, right? Big black eyes, hairless, small mouth, big head.
Oh, so that's the Gray.
That's
that
the
you're
Gray,
talking
right?
about. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of religiously minded people in that context will associate demons with ETs. Demons with Greys. And that's a big thing right now in certain circles, right? The whole disclosure phenomenon in the mainstream, from a lot of hardcore Christian point of view, is demonic. Demonic disclosure is happening to them. So there's a lot of agendas going on with the whole physical ET thing, which is what everyone's kind of focused on. And so the Gray storyline has been really used and abused and misused, and probably is definitely a truth to it. But what gets very confusing is now that the dark forces of the government probably have also abused this to generate, like, maybe they've been doing many of the abductions too. Like, there's a whole camp of people who believe that the dark forces of certain parts of the government, who have some of these technologies that we think are UFOs, are actually military. They're doing abductions and have been, many of them, experimenting on humans. And we have the technology, allegedly, to implant memories, implant what we think we saw, implant emotions, and that's a whole rabbit hole too. Project Bluebeam, those old projects that have to do with this whole agenda of disclosure and being misused for darker forces to create fear. There's that too.
Like the
Mixed in.
savior, like the idea, like there's an idea that the government will put the aliens as like these saviors.
As these saviors.
In order
Look
to
up Project Bluebeam.
take away.
Right, it's all there. Who's looked up Project Bluebeam? Who knows of Project Bluebeam? Look it up. It's on. It's open and fully disclosed. There was a project, Project Bluebeam, and according to the mainstream media, it was closed down. It was stopped, just like the remote viewing projects have been shut down, which they haven't. Like most projects have been shut down, which haven't, right? So Project Bluebeam was made famous, if I recall right. The details are a little blurry because I haven't looked into it in a while. But it was made famous, I think, 70s, 80s, 60s, sometime. A reporter was doing an interview with a person who was part of the project, a whistleblower who came out to tell what was happening. The reporter brought the story out, okay, and I think the story is the reporter ended up dying soon after. And I remember reading the original conversation they had. And the story is that this project will be used by the government with high-level technology to create, the point was to create a staged alien phenomenon. Staged invasion, something, to usher in the New World Order, is the whole idea. right? To create mass hysteria and fear, to overtake the mass religions, because with the technology they were going to use, they could create images in the sky, holographic images in the sky, and implant feelings and memories and thoughts into minds of people with the tech, which uses a lot of 5G tech. Yes.
60.
So, and the interviewer was like, well, how can you stop this? If they can implant thoughts, what can we do? And I remember reading this. The guy said, the whistleblower said, there's only one way out of it. If you find a way to observe your thoughts and not react to them. And I remember reading it and go, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Mindfulness.
Yeah.
Meditation, mindfulness. Not only meditation though, because that can be tricky, because in meditation, now if you're just doing like concentration meditation, right, without strong mindfulness, what happens in concentration meditation, and the Buddha talked about this explicitly, he has a whole sutra called the Sarangami Sutra, where this is kind of like an advanced text for some advanced practitioners, where he goes chapter by chapter, a certain number of stages, say like 30 stages of what happens in deep stages of meditation, where you encounter beings, you experience phenomenon, visual, auditory, sensory, that seem real, and how to not get overcome by it. So he talks about, okay, at this stage, here's how it'll happen. You'll feel this. Now the point is, it's not exactly probably that way, but he's talking about this general way of what happens when our minds start to open up beyond ourselves and we start to tap into stuff. We get bombarded. Things come in, we get influenced, right? And the whole point of proper meditation is stay unwavering, right? Don't let it affect you. And so the Buddha's talking about, okay, here's what happens. At very advanced stages, you'll see advanced beings. You'll see people giving you powers. You'll see people doing all kinds of stuff, and stay focused. At the end of each section, he goes, students, monks, ignore all of it, just stay focused. So at the end of each one, ignore all of it, stay focused. So the point is, though, having the mindfulness element of being able to not give in and react to what you're experiencing is crucial, right? And that's what this whistleblower was literally saying to the interviewer. Because imagine, you suddenly get implanted with a thought of fear, and you see in your mind something crazy scary. How are you not going to believe that? Right? Or you see, like, and this is kind of in the whole Bluebeam project, the original, I mean, it's probably changed by now or whatever it is, I don't know, but the original project was every part of the world would see a massive formation of their world teacher. So Christ, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna would appear in the sky, like in real 3D, and start talking to, convince all the religious people that, and they would all be saying the same thing, it's time to give up the old religions, it's time for one world religion, here it is, blah, 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 right? That was the original plan, Project Bluebeam. We digressed a lot, but the point is, so people who know this are watching the whole disclosure phenomenon very closely. It's the thing, and that's what I encourage us to do. Like, watch what's happening very closely with this whole alien stuff, including like Spielberg's Disclosure Day, because they're always showing one type of ET, which is the thing, usually kind of a gray-based and or reptilian-based ET. And it's always, the idea is going to happen where they're going to be pushed as saviors of mankind. who doesn't want to be saved, right? So that's going to be like the storyline. And I'm telling you, we got the technology now. And especially with 5G every 500 feet rolling out. I mean, that's what back then they were talking about, the type of technology they were using to do this stuff then, to experiment. The 5G technology, extremely low frequency tech, and the high gigahertz range, wavelengths that are in 5G
It's a military.
and 6G and whatever they're.
It's a military grade weapon.
Right, yeah. And that's what they were talking about back in the day, that they were working with. So we have that rolled out everywhere right now, is the thing.
While everyone was sequestered in
Yeah,
their
yeah.
homes, that's
In
when
fear
they
with COVID.
really brought it up.
Right,
That's when they were installing
sitting at
it
home.
there.
And so we have this massive also disclosure movement in the government, right? Trump's gonna disclose everything at any moment now. But he fully hasn't yet, kind of. But in the mainstream, the whole UAP, UFOs are now, UAPs, right? And so government officials talking about UAPs all across the board.
What are UAPs?
Unidentified aerial phenomena.
Oh, right, okay.
It's more general than flying object.
I guess. My thought is, what's one of the definitions of a cult? Right? They create their own language. Like they create their own words for, certain things that we use. It's one of the definitions of a cult. Maybe that's the point of UAP. I don't know. Why use UAP? Everyone uses UFO already, right?
Well,
But now they suddenly changed it to UAP.
in 1984, they had Newspeak. They invented Newspeak, which was a set of vocabulary that trained people to think in a certain way.
Yeah.
If you're going to introduce certain words, you're going to train people to think in that way that
Mm-hmm.
uses those words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know who's really good at that? Scientology. Has their whole own language for stuff. I was almost into that world for a little bit. So I kind of know. I stepped my toe in.
Ooh, they let you out?
I had to run.
You escaped.
I had to run, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they kept sending me letters for years afterwards. Annoying letters. Every address I went to, they followed me and kept sending me solicitations. My wife Olivia, here's what she did. How far back? She stuck pennies on. Pennies? She taped pennies onto the envelope and put it back in the mailbox to return to sender. So they would have to pay for the postage. You see?
No, it's
For the heavier, so now it's heavier mail.
Oh.
She stuck pennies on it. It worked. They stopped.
Oh.
And they will pay extra for you.
Right.
They're like, well, he's costing us money.
There's a big Scientology building in Nashville, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's on 8th Avenue or 12th?
I think so, yeah.
8th Avenue.
Yeah. Anyone seen Leah Remini's documentary
Yeah.
on Scientology?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. It's well done. Whew, that's a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
L. Ron Hubbard, he was friends with Aleister Crowley for a while. I think they ended up falling out. And Aleister Crowley, who doesn't know about Aleister Crowley? Called, what's his term? Like one of the greatest dark magicians of our time, I think. But massive rabbit hole of dark occult. He did, I'll just say this briefly, he did something. So, concentration meditation is a basis for all forms of cultivation throughout the world. always, okay? So, but concentration and meditation, where you focus on something so intently, you know, you get into this zone, right? You can do it for any purpose, is the thing. Right? Good and bad. Right? The greatest criminal minds are getting into concentration meditations in their own way and, you know, doing mastermind criminal activities, right? And vice versa. On the good side. So, it's just a human ability to harness our mind in such a way to create something, whether for good or bad. So, you know, in most of the Western magic traditions, they have concentration and meditation, obviously. In the good and the black magic traditions, they have concentration and meditations across the board. They're having you focus on certain ways on different things with ritual and blah, blah, blah. So Crowley, of course, you know, he promoted that, concentration meditations. He didn't call it that, you know, but he promoted meditations, he would call them that. So, for some of you, you know this, the Buddha talked about three basic foundational principles for what he called awakening insight cultivation. If you got these, you get it, and you'll eventually awaken. And we've talked about some of this already, but first being that everything is impermanent, right? Nothing lasts forever. And coming to peace with that is the challenge. The second is that if you don't come to peace with it, that there'll be suffering, dukkha. That you'll fall victim to craving and aversion, and you'll get caught up in that, and that'll create suffering. The second insight. And the third is, because you'll get so caught up in that, you'll lose touch with who you really are, which is not what you think you are. So the true sense of the self, that you start identifying with your body and mind and feelings and thoughts and the good and the bad, and you stay caught up in that, and you stay in this endless round of suffering because you're never happy. And the happiness doesn't last. So, in terms of that, he said, if you can understand these three principles, you will awaken and be free of them. Right? Okay. So, but that's a rabbit hole. Crowley took those three and inverted them. It is one of the most darkest, ingenious things I've ever read. And it's on Wikipedia, by the way. That's where I put it. He called his religion Thelema. And he inverted these three teachings of the Buddha, which was brilliant from the perspective of darkness. So he said, there is permanence. You can attain, which means immortality, right? You can be permanent in a state. And then he said, you have to, it doesn't matter, but if I remember right, I think he said you have to use pain and pleasure to do that. You have to master pain and pleasure. Then you will realize that you, yourself, your body and mind, who you think is permanent now, can become a god. Super powerful, you know.
Yeah.
And that's what he promoted. That's what his whole thing. But we sidetracked into some heavy stuff, going from Scientology to Crowley. But Hubbard was friends with Crowley, is the point, you know. And Hubbard created this whole intricate, genius system, story, thing, of the same thing. You know, his whole thing is you also can become a god. You know, that's the whole point of Scientology. You can become a living god, right? The one thing the great teachers like Christ warned against. That's not the point, right? You're not supposed to think that you will be a god, because what you think of God is not you. God is already in you, right? And so once you realize that, then you don't want to attain to become like a god. But there is a path to become godlike, but it's not how they're saying it is. Which, let me just touch upon, while a few minutes, which is connected, just AI for a moment. AI and robotics coming up, robots having AI, or the whole emulating consciousness, emulating thinking and feeling, which is what AI is, we're trying to push aspects of AI to do that, right? To be like us. Well, it's a good reminder that in the ancient cultures, like I think I overheard this recently, even in Judaism, golems were a big thing. In Judaic Kabbalah, there were certain things you would do to create a golem. Do you know what I mean by golem? Golem is the idea where you fashion an inanimate substance to a human form.
No, okay.
And you animate it.
Okay.
Right. That's the traditional idea of golem. It's an ancient idea.
So typically clay?
Clay, wood, whatever. Currently there'll be metal. Robots, right? Like we're literally about to create golems throughout the world. Potentially, But the point is, in the ancient world, that's what they were doing. And you could do this for good reasons and bad reasons, obviously. Tibetans, in high-level Tibetan tradition, they have a reason to do golems, actually, for a methodology. They would literally use this principle for a meditation application, which is mind-blowing. In high-level concentration samadhi states, in certain Tibetan traditions, you would visualize a human form, okay, as practice. And you would do it to such a hardcore elite level where you would, in your mind, animate that. So you're not constructing it, but you're making it with your mind, right? But you're visualizing it so strongly, this thing starts to move around. Can you imagine that? So it starts to move around in your room. And you're still controlling it in your mind. So you're kind of like imagining it, if you will, right? But it starts to become kind of a more realistic imagination. And then eventually it starts to do its own thing. You let it have its own way. And you practice that. So a autonomous, imaginary figment you create, okay? Then at the highest elite levels, so they say, it starts to solidify into an actual substance. To the point where you can create an assistant. Of course, we've read these things in old fiction stories, right? And so the assistant then follows you around and obeys your command. In the Tibetan tradition, though, the idea is once you're able to create that, then you destroy it. As a teaching, you get rid of it, right?
Yeah.
But of course, in other places, other cultures, they would create these things and not destroy them. Or they would fashion them out of a mold, clay, wood, right? And then they would imbue them with energy. Right? That's a whole thing now where you can maybe imbue it with your own life force, with your own energy. This gets into cool other topics. Or you summon a spirit to it, right? That's the ultimate. But again, the good side is the original ancient temples. Why would they have idols of gods in their temples? Just imagine now with what we're saying. What's the coolest idea of having an idol, say, of Athena in a temple of Athena? Maybe creating an anchor for a being like Athena to actually manifest. Right? that's really why they originally would have those idols in these temples. To literally create an anchor point for high-level beings to actually manifest and interact, whether speak or whatever. But I personally think originally, in a forgotten time, these beings would teleport on these platforms and they would appear. And then over eons, humanity just, once that stopped happening, we started immortalizing them in these statues. And these beings could use those statues as anchor points to appear as the ages changed. And then eventually that stopped happening. And now, as the Hindus and animists and shamans use now these images as mental anchor points to connect.
So this reminds me, did you ever see Longlegs, the horror movie?
No.
Has anybody seen Longlegs? I think it's Nicolas Cage's best film, but he plays this like satanic worshiper who will make dolls, and then he can kind of doing this. He can take this doll, and then he can make it so it can possess people, right? So they'll have these dolls delivered to houses as it's a gift from the church, but he's all white. So it's a brilliant film, but
Same idea.
I was not right after that. But it's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You take a doll and you give
Right.
it some sort of power, some sort of life. And I'm wondering if that's kind of like the idea when that guy made Longlegs. It terrified me.
It's an
But if you
interesting
love
idea.
horror films,
Yeah.
Longlegs.
It's an
Longlegs
old
is
idea
great.
in every culture.
But now that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Now to hear you talk about it.
Animating it and inanimate objects
Yeah.
with some life force, either a spirit or just energy,
Yeah.
for some purpose, good or bad.
Uh-huh.
It's a thing
Right.
that we've done for ages.
Like Chucky.
Like Chucky. Exactly. It's
Chucky.
kind of like Longlegs is kind of in that realm, that Chucky
Or Pinocchio,
category. Pinocchio,
Pinocchio.
right.
right? Famous Pinocchio.
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. Now we're gonna have metallic, electronic humanoids walking around probably really soon. I don't know what's gonna happen. But the good news is most people do not have occult powers. You can't do anything. But, they're gonna probably emulate thinking in these machines in mainstream. So there'll be robots in your home that are talking and thinking and, copying emotions, thinking on their own. Will that attract entities? And will entities be able to enter them?
Yeah.
Intriguing, I don't know. Hopefully not. But if the idea of golems are true from the past, yeah.
So I think when I think about extraterrestrials, sometimes the concept comes up that so as humans, who are we? Are we imbued with consciousness? Are we incarnate here by some other life force,
Exactly, right.
essence, and what is our purpose here?
So, on one hand, I have compassion and empathy for the whole AI movement. And what I mean by that, I understand a lot of the problems with it, is the thing. And the abuse and misuse of it, and the whole the whole data center and energy consumption. But I think on one hand, we're doing a natural human thing of creating. We can't but create images of ourselves. I think that's a universal sentient principle throughout the cosmos, that beings will always create copies of them if they can, right? And the only way we've naturally done is kids.
Yeah.
We do it biologically with children, right? But I think maybe what you're saying is, what if we are imbued in this biological suit. It's just not machine, it's just biological. Right? What if there are so advanced beings who can create biological suits
Made in the image of God.
of them?
Quote. Yeah.
Right. Of their creator. And then it's a natural function of non-physical spirits to imbue. Happens over and over, right? Spirits come in, spirits come in, spirits come in. All things. So, on one end, I'm like, oh, we're doing what? Is this, what we're going through, a trial of a civilization, of how we handle this? Either we go Terminator,
Yeah.
or we come out like, oh my gosh, this is what it means to be a creator.
Well, it's like the movie The Creator. Have you seen the movie The Creator?
I haven't seen
It's
that.
brilliant. It's like, it's about AI, but it's the positive side that they're not out to, take over. They're meant to work with humans, but it's a great
It
film.
all depends on
but-
how they're programmed.
Yeah.
It all depends on the creator, is the thing though, right? And so the problem is Earth is full of all types of creators.
Yeah.
The good and the bad.
Well, this makes me want to deepen my spiritual practice and attune more to my innate divinity. It's almost like it's speeding up that
Yeah,
process
it's
and
speeding it up.
encouraging that
Yeah.
process for
I
me.
feel that too.
Both are advancing,
Yeah,
and maybe that is the swing of the ages.
right. Right. Are we just AI creations of our higher self?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
In
Maybe.
biological suits, right?
Yeah.
That programmed our DNA. It's one way to think of it, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's a matrix and you're being programmed to do what you need to do.
Oh, I gotta share this before I go. I came across the coolest thing on a social media podcast where I forget who it was. It's a rather famous guy. I forget his name, but it's not Bartlett and it's not Rogan. It's not some of the more famous ones. It's another guy who's interviewing this person who has discovered that on DMT specifically, if you take a red light laser, tell me if any of you have heard
I've
this.
heard of this.
If you take a laser and you put it on a screen where you kind of expand the laser, so it's not just a point or a line, but kind of expanded bar of light, okay? And you're on DMT, you will see code or figures in that light. And people are seeing the same characters.
Oh, I have heard
It's
about
not
this.
changing.
Yeah.
So it's like this actual code that's showing up. And if you put it on something else, it changes.
Ah.
So it's almost like this code of matter that's showing up on DMT that you can access when there's a certain type of light. So this guy discovered this, and he's like, he's really trying to push this. He's got researchers. He's creating a database because people are seeing the same characters,
Yeah, I've heard about this.
and they're compiling the characters, what people think that they're seeing, recording it, and trying to create sense of it. Whether it is a code or what it is, because it's oftentimes the same character showing up. And they're saying some of the characters are very similar to Japanese characters.
Like the Matrix.
Like the Matrix,
That's
yeah.
all Japanese.
Yeah, and these articles are talking about that.
Yeah.
Fascinating, right? I want to try it as soon as I can, but but it also, certain people also see other colors of light. Is what's happening.
Wow.
And I think in the interview he even mentioned sunlight possibly showing it in different ways.
Well, when you sun gaze for a while, you start seeing the morning, sunrise sun gazing. You start seeing a different rose gold color.
Yeah.
you start seeing different colors and you start seeing auras around things.
Yeah.
So your perception of the normal spectrum is somehow expanding.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems like you have to expand your perception somehow, either with psychedelics or deep meditative states, maybe,
Yeah.
and you can see it. But yeah, this guy was interviewing it, and he was like telling him stuff like, he was saying, if you put the light on your arm, you won't see your arm. You'll see the code. But you have to be on DMT or something similar. He said ketamine doesn't work.
But your brain naturally produces it if you go into a deep state of meditation, right?
Yeah. So I thought I'd share that.
Yeah,
I was fascinated by that.
That is fascinating.
Which goes into, and some of these people are talking about, this is the idea. They're talking about simulation theory, right? The idea that this is all a simulation,
Yeah.
like a big video game,
Yeah.
right? Well, and this code being like proof of that, like, here, look, here's the code behind matter, maybe. But, simulation theory is nothing but the ancient theory of Maya,
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
the illusion
yeah.
of reality. It's the same
Sure,
thing.
Yeah.
But if there is truth to this, like we can start tapping into this mathematical understanding of matter. Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this was fun.
Yeah.
Moving
it
all over the
was.
place. So next time you guys think of aliens or hear it on the news, think of Tara.
Right. Awesome.
Any future suggestions? Or any ideas of changing format or,
I like Saturdays.
yeah, well, it has to be Saturdays now because Sundays it's being used. The day's flipped. So it's going to be Saturdays from now on.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Saturdays work.
Do we want more meditation?
Yeah.
Do we want more of something else?
I always enjoy group meditation.
Okay.
Yeah, the
There's
meditation's
something
nice.
powerful there.
Do we want more like instruction about certain things? Like kind of what we shared today about the crown chakra.
Oh, yeah, that was nice.
Like ending the first part of meditation with like an instructional
Mhm.
piece that we talked about right
Yeah.
after. That was
Yeah.
Yeah.
nice.
So, as I look back at, all the satsangs for over the year, there's a lot of stuff I've talked about across the board. And so, like, portions of each of those satsangs could become satsangs themselves.
Yeah.
So I may start doing that, just taking small mini topics and making those the focal points.
Yeah.
Because today was kind of like a fun, meandering through some imagination and cool stuff, which is very entertaining. But I tried to make it as spiritual as possible.
Mhm.
But the bigger thing about, enlightened living is the direct experience and the practice of spirituality, right? And so I don't want to lose touch with that, is the thing. So I think I will probably be bringing more of that into the mix.
Yeah, some examples of how we could practice,
Yeah.
like things that could take home and work into my routine,
Right.
my practice.
And I think you mentioned like toxins and stuff once. I think that would be an interesting topic.
Toxins and how to deal with toxins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Physical toxins, emotional toxins, energetic toxins, spiritual toxins. Toxins. Yeah. Okay. Maybe next time that'd be a good topic.
Yeah, these have been great though. So, I mean, you're doing a good thing here.
So now on a different note, okay, how can we expand this? Kind of more open-ended.
Expand the.
Well,
Maybe like workshops or?
yeah, workshops. You know, get more people in here. You know, I think that's kind of the next stage. I'd love to see. So hold that in your mind. It's kind of where I'm at. You know, hold that in your mind, right? So collectively, we kind of add that energy to what all this is.
I think there could be like book clubs, like where everyone's reading the same book.
Yeah, I do want to do that. I want to have like kind of specific book study of certain different sacred texts
Yeah.
and different themes where it's like a prescribed amount of time, like a 6-week or
Yeah.
2-month study of the Gita, or the study of, you know, some other sacred text or some specific philosophy, things like that, you know. I think those would be, whether just all online or maybe in person and online, I don't know.
That's a good
Hmm?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that would be good. The Bhagavad Gita would be cool because, like, I read, but it was like the TM take on Bhagavad Gita, right? Which is like, you know, a lot of commentary. This is
Yeah.
what this is, but I don't feel like I got the true experience of the book in like just a neutral sense.
Yeah.
It was like it was through a filter in a way, you know.
And you know,
which is fine, but
and
yeah.
the thing is, I usually overlay my take on things,
yeah,
which pulls in like, what would the Buddha say about the Gita,
yeah.
right? I mean, what would Christ say about the Bhagavad Gita?
Yeah.
Let's think about that.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting discussion. But that's kind of how I would want to take things, you know, where, yeah, the traditional thing is you take an excerpt, you read the excerpt, and then you group discuss it, talk about it, but then you add these other nuances. And the thing is, you know, part of this also is a community thing, so if you guys have something you're particularly interested in terms of teaching, right, or being a leader of a certain, you know, topic or book, that's part of it too.
Thinking like a weekend retreat would be cool
Yeah.
too, and then people could get to know each other better, and that would build community.
Definitely. More workshops, more retreats, book studies. But just generally, just hold the thought of expansion
Yeah.
in your minds, if you will. In your minds and hearts.
Are you gonna edit this part out?
Yeah.
Okay. Then one word. You wanna pack this place? Levitate next week.
Hilarious, yeah, that would work.
And the
If
place
I
will be
could,
packed.
I would, man. You know, those of you who know the TM movement, right? They had an advanced portion of the TM called the Siddha,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
yeah.
Where they were levitating allegedly.
Oh, really?
It was how to learn how to levitate. Was a huge marketing thing back in the day.
Mhm.
So there's supposedly videos and pictures of people like levitating, and the first step is hopping. You'd start like
Oh, yeah.
hopping in place, you know,
Right.
while you're meditating. So it was a big thing,
It's the 60s.
part of the TM movement.
So you can't argue with success.
And people, I think it was like thousands of dollars to take it. I think you're just meditating for a long time.
Build a
Basically.
nest egg that way.
If I could levitate, that would be nice. Yeah. any of you start levitating, let me know.
I'm working on it. It'll be a while.
I levitated my lunch last week.
Are you serious?
Has anyone ever done spoon bending?
No.
That seems to be like
The Israeli guy.
the gate or the doorway to.
Olivia did a spoon bending class, like I think last year at some point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she got into it by connecting and watching some other videos with someone else. My kids were doing it.
Well,
I mean, it's a thing. I did it at home.
wait, so
You actually bent a spoon?
Yeah, my boys were bending a spoon.
Really?
Yeah,
All right. That got to be the next workshop, the next
and
class.
this explains why concentration
well, this
is
it's not so much
important.
with the spoon bending is more of how it's described, and what I agree with is it's more of an energetic phenomenon, right? And especially it's easier to do it in a group. Is how they also teach it. You get in a group. How they traditionally teach it is you get in a group. Everyone has a spoon, and you start kind of rubbing the neck of it, and you get everyone excited. They start getting like hysterically excited. Okay? And you generate this like mass energy. And you get into this kind of like frenzy with this excitement to do it, and all of a sudden, for certain people, it starts to get warm, where and you rub the spoon at the neck while you're doing this. You know, yelling, laughing, you know, saying stuff, and the neck starts to get warm where you're rubbing it often. And all of a sudden, it's like, and as you're rubbing it, you just gently kind of like push it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you're not touching it at first, but that's advanced, not touching it. But you do kind of push it a little bit, but a spoon won't bend if you just kind of slightly push it, right? And you know that, and you're just kind of doing that. It starts to get a little warm, and all of a sudden it goes whoop,
Yeah.
or in one direction that you're pushing goes whoop, or just a little bit easier. Oh, it just suddenly feels different.
Wow.
And if you kind of stay there, you can keep moving it and contort it. And we have some wild utensils left over.
How do you
Some
eat
stuff.
soup at your house?
I can bring it next time, you know. But like contorted spoons, and like afterwards you try to do it again, and you're like, you know, if you're strong, you can kind of bend a spoon a little bit, but it's a thing.
All right, everyone bring a spoon next week. I'm serious.
I'll tell Olivia. I'll see if she's up for a little workshop. But something like that, it blows your mind, and it really excites you. You're like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah.
this is the thing. It's real. Magic is real.
Well, they have those things that the poles that find water,
Yeah, that's easier.
right?
You guys
Like-
could do that now. I mean, that's.
But then they'll do that at like, okay, there's spirits around, right? And then, but it's
That's more-
usually done with,
That's more pendulum phenomenon. Same phenomenon, dowsing.
yeah.
You know, using the pendulum, dowsing rods.
But it's usually done with like a group of people. It may be the
You
same
can, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It may be
But
like
with that, you're using your energy to do it primarily.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah.
So, like, once you kind of get good at this, you can do the spoon bending by yourself. You know, but you have to kind of get into this like altered flow, relaxed state.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
Remember Uri Geller?
He's who
Well-
made it famous, yeah.
Right, but wasn't he, exposed as a fraud at one point, I thought?
I don't know. Maybe with some stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, maybe not spoon bending, maybe the
Yeah.
other stuff that he did.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are exposed as frauds, but they're not.
Right.
But it's
Because they're challenging.
they're challenging
norms,
the
yeah.
status quo. So something always wants to expose them as a fraud. Like I question.
And you know, it depends on. One of the first things I do when I come across like a person, a famous person, or like a spiritual person or a technique, I always Google that person and like criticism or fraud to see what comes up. You know, because I want to know, like, what is there any dirt on this person, right? Especially if it's like a new guru or a new teacher, like, okay, blah blah blah, fraud, blah blah, criticism, okay. But what's funny is, it's such a big gamut.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, oftentimes it's like misunderstanding or like I don't agree with this person, so blah blah blah. Oftentimes it is misdeeds, you know. Oftentimes it's maybe plagiarism, you know. But what was interesting, the Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
Do you guys know of Napoleon Hill? Famous writer.
Think and Grow Rich.
Think and
I
Grow
think.
Rich.
Yeah, from like the 50s, 40s, right? It's like this classic business marketing, money making manual where it's all about mindset. He talks a lot about, you know, I was listening to him he came on my feed and I was listening to his voice in an actual talk and he was talking about like great stuff. Changing your beliefs will change how money flows to you, you know, a lot of stuff like The Secret. A lot of Secret was based on his stuff, but good stuff. I was like, it's very inspiring, it's kind of nice, good. I looked him up. He's full of scandal. Napoleon Hill. It was a little shocking.
What kind of scandals?
Well, like personal, business. I didn't go into much detail, but like his ex-wives had nothing good to say about him
Wow.
and stuff he did, and people he cheated allegedly, like all kinds of character issues.
Because
But
I
my
would be
point is,
very
it's
cool.
like, you know, I think it's a slippery slope when we generalize and or it sometimes it's important to separate, say, a teaching from the person.
Yes, definitely.
You know, sometimes not, depending on what the person is trying to do. But
I think
it's across the board. Yeah.
judgment needs to be out of it. Like judgment shouldn't be in
It becomes
anything.
slippery, because he may have been like a lousy person, but a great teacher.
well, he's at the pinnacle of that whole
Yeah.
movement.
That's why it was like, whoa.
And
It's kinda
maybe
shocking.
it's the the dark side of power corrupting.
Yeah, that too.
You know, like all the the great gurus that have these scandals.
Right.
Speaking of which, I just heard about Carlos Castaneda. I know there's a book about him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who he is?
Mm-hmm.
And like this new thing says he's a complete fraud. I mean, I didn't read it yet. I just heard it
Yeah.
in the
I
Times.
think anyone who challenges anything we think is normal, like I feel like they're always gonna be targeted as.
Right.
Yeah.
It depends on like what they mean by fraud too, and who's saying it.
You know that,
and,
like, all his
yeah.
stories are just made up because he wanted to become
I mean,
rich
that's the
and
thing
famous.
too. A lot of these stories could and probably are made up.
Yeah.
Honestly, and like how like we've had that talk too.
Yeah.
You know, it's like on one hand, to future readers, it doesn't matter. It's kind of what I say, because I think we were talking about autobiography of a yogi.
Yeah.
I think you asked me like, do you think all these stories are true in his book? And I said, you know what? I don't know, but it probably doesn't matter. And because really the essence and the the energy and this and what it means for people, is kind of what we take from it, because we don't really care at this point if it's true or not, right? But if he did make them up, what does it mean? I don't know, but I think that happens a lot in the spiritual world, in the self-help world, in most of these things. I think a lot of stuff is probably like stories are probably made up. Like Carlos may have made up all his stories, but he's influenced so many people in wonderful ways. He's spawned so many positive movements. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, Dan Millman, the author of
Same thing,
Peaceful
yeah.
Warrior, was directly influenced by Carlos Castaneda, and Dan Millman spawned tons of self-help, new age movements and
Wait,
things like
you're
that.
not saying he made it up too, are you?
I'm
joking, but
I love Dan Millman's story,
But
right?
what's
Like-
interesting about that, even if they made it up, like you think they're making it up, but maybe they're picking it up from the ether and it's a true story,
that too.
even though they've
Right.
made it up.
There's that too.
You know, like people who invent the same thing at the same time, and they're all accused of stealing things.
Right.
They all got the idea the same way, independently.
Yeah.
So,
I think there is something though. I think some authors will, with high level integrity, say,
yeah.
"Okay, I'm making this up," or this may not be how it happened, right? Or it may have been different circumstances, or this is a story, or I got this from this place. You know, a lot of people don't reference where they're getting stuff, and they just repeat it over and over again, and then you think, oh, he's really saying it. No, it was said way back then.
All these psychology books do the same thing, with the exception of, I think, the guy, you know, who mistake his wife for a hat. They all make up these, you know, combinations of people that aren't real, but we read them as if these are real patients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
Well, that meditation book that you turned me on to.
The Mind Illuminated.
Yeah, I mean that if you Google that author, I mean there's scandals.
He's got scandal at the end of his life.
But
yeah.
that's a great book.
Mm-hmm.
he's
I mean, it's still a wonderful book.
He allegedly had an affair with
Yeah.
one of his people close to him. While he
Right,
was still married.
but I've gotten so much out of that book. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think judgment doesn't belong. Like it's like two things can be true at once.
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say though, there are rare gems of people who have the wisdom teachings and the clean, pristine integrity. As far as we can tell. There are those.
Yeah.
And those are in a different tier
like,
altogether.
like,
Well, like Ramana Maharshi, Ramakrishna, right? Dipa Ma, like some of these more famous people who have, and even Yogananda, there's really no dirt on him at all, anywhere, by anyone, or any type of,
Yeah.
I didn't like him, or anything. He would fall in the category.
Yeah.
So there are people, but it's hard to find. But those people are who I kind of fall back on. It's like, okay, I'm gonna listen to everything you have to say
Yeah.
and really take it to heart. There was a website, I don't know if it's still around, this guy tried to make a list like that of like different tiers of gurus. It's very entertaining. And he had these different like rating systems of like top level, lower, medium,
5
bottom,
lotuses, 4 lotuses.
bottom of the rung, charlatan.
It's a great idea.
Of course, you've got to have a pretty good criteria and not be non-judgmental too.
And it's hard not to be biased, but
Yeah.
still.
Well, guys, it's way past. We're having too much fun.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.